Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the differences between the strict and the abstract equality operators in JavaScript. So the strict equality operator is also known as the triple equals. So that's what I will be calling it in this video. And the loose or the abstract equality operator is also known as the double equals. So I will be calling it the double equals. These operators can be used or are used to check the equality of values of different value data types, and they'll return the Boolean value true or false if the values you're trying to compare are equal or not. So whatever they'd return, they'll either return true or false depending on whether the values you're trying to compare are equal, right? So if the values you're trying to compare are equal, they would return true. If the values are not equal, they would return false. So before we begin, I'd like to talk briefly about the different value data types we have in JavaScript and how they can be coerced to the Boolean values true or false, because one of the operators I'm going to be talking about allows coercion while the other doesn't. So in JavaScript, we have 8 basic value data types, and they can be divided into, or they can be identified as primitives or non-primitives. Under primitives, we have string, number, Boolean, symbol, big int, am I missing anything? Null, undefined. And under non-primitives, we have the object type, function and array as subtypes of the object type. So changing values from one data type to another, like string to a number or Boolean to a number, is referred to as coercion or type conversion in JavaScript. And we have 2 types of coercion in JavaScript, explicit and implicit. So when you as a developer are specific about your intention to convert a value from one data type to another using any of the built-in functions in the language, that is referred to as explicit coercion. But when you allow JavaScript to handle the conversion for you, that is referred to as implicit coercion. I have a video where I explain how the different value data types in JavaScript are coerced to their Boolean equivalent. And by Boolean equivalent, I mean some values in JavaScript are considered falsy values. They're considered as falsy values. Others are considered as truthy values. So JavaScript defines a short list of values that, when coerced to Boolean, will evaluate to false. When coerced to Boolean, they will return false. Every other value that is not on this short list will evaluate to true. When they're coerced to Boolean, they will return true. So I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description if you want to find out more about how different value data types are coerced to Boolean. So they are Boolean equivalent. You can check it out. But for now, let's jump right into today's topic. So we're going to start with the strict equality operator, also known as the triple equals. And this operator uses an algorithm defined in the ECMAScript specification known as the is strictly equals abstract operation. So let's see what it says. It says the abstract operation is strictly equals, takes arguments x and y, and it provides the semantics for the comparison x triple equals y, returning true or false. It performs the following step. So I want to say the first thing it does, right, when you use this operator to compare 2 values. It says if type x is different from type y, return false. So the first thing it says it checks the type. If they're of different types, there is no way they're going to be equal. It's not possible. So it doesn't even care if the values are the same. If the types are different, it just returns false. So let's take some examples. I'm going to be using an application called Run.js. It is a JavaScript and TypeScript playground. So I'm going to be writing my code here, and the result is going to be displayed on the right over here. That's sweet. Sweet. So if we're comparing 2 strings, for example, we can see the strings here are of the same type, since they're of the same type, it goes ahead to check if the characters in the string are exactly the same. The characters have to be exactly the same and of the same length. If they are, then it returns true. We can see we get what we're getting true here. So let's take another example. If we try to compare the string 5 and the number 5, right? This operator doesn't perform type coercion like the spec says. It just sees that they're of different types. This is a string, this is a number. It just immediately gives us false because they're of different types. It doesn't care if the values are the same. Immediately it sees that they are of different types, it returns false. So this operator would only return true if the values and the types are exactly the same, except for a few cases, and we're going to see them now. So the first exception is nan. Nan is not equal to itself or any other value in JavaScript, right? If we're comparing two values and they're both nans, we'll get false. So nan is not equal to itself or any other value in JavaScript. The second exception is zero and signed zeros, like -0. So 0 and -0, when compared with this triple equals or the strict equality operator, are considered equal, right? So they're only considered equal if they're compared as numbers. If you compare them as strings, you'd get false. The two exceptions we have when comparing with the strict equality operator. Other than these two I just mentioned, the strict equality operator just needs both the types and the values to be exactly the same. If they're not exactly the same, it will just return false. Now that's it for the strict equality operator. Now let's move to the abstract equality operator, also known as the double equals or the loose equality operator. So when comparing values with this operator and the types are different, it allows JavaScript to resolve the data types by implicitly converting them to the same type before going ahead with the comparison. So this operator allows coercion, it allows type conversion. This operator also uses an algorithm defined in the ECMAScript specification called the is loosely equals abstract operator. It uses this algorithm to compare values. So let's see what the specification says this operator does first. What is the first thing it does when you use it to compare two values? So it says the abstract operation is loosely equals to arguments x and y. It provides the semantics for the comparison x double equals y, returning true or false. Now it says if type x is the same as type y, then perform the strict equality comparison on them. Return is strictly equals x is equal to y. So the first thing it does is it basically checks if both values are of the same type. And if they're of the same type, it just performs the strict equality comparison on them. Meaning that if both values are of the same type and you use the double equals and the triple equals, they do the same thing when the values match. There's no difference between the double equals and the triple equals when the values are the same, because it just said if type x is the same as type y, perform the strict equality comparison on them. So what does the double equals do when it encounters values whose types don't match? Let's see what the spec says. The second thing on the list is null and undefined. It says if x is null and y is undefined, return true. So that means null and undefined are coercively equal to each other when you're comparing them with this operator. They are coercively equal to each other and to no other value in the language. Null and undefined. If x is undefined, if y is null, return true. Okay. What if we're trying to compare a string and a number? Right, let's see what the spec says. It says if type x is number and type y is string, convert y to a number before going ahead to compare them. Call the two-number abstract operation on y, that is the string, and then when you get the result, you can go ahead with the comparison. I have a video on the two-number abstract operation and how JavaScript implicitly calls it when it needs to convert different value data types to number, and I'm going to leave that in the description as well. But let's take an example to see how this works. We can use our string 5 and number 5 here. So let me just get rid of this. Now we're doing the comparison with the double equals, and we get true, right? Because JavaScript calls the two-number abstract operation to convert this string 5 to a number first before going ahead with the comparison. So hypothetically speaking, this is what JavaScript does under the code. We're seeing the string 5 being compared to the number 5, right? Just ignore whatever is going on here. The first thing it does is it calls the two-number abstract operation to convert the string 5 to the number 5, right? So when it calls the two-number abstract operation to convert the string 5 to the number 5, we now have we now have the number 5 and the number 5. But then the specification and the types are the same now because they're numbers. The specification says when the types match, perform the result of, when the types match, return the result of strict equality comparison. So now that the types match, we're now going to have the result of this. So we're going to get true. Don't mind whatever is going on here. So this is, you know, what JavaScript does under the hood when we compare this, hypothetically speaking, when we compare this string 5 with the number 5. Now let's see what the double equals operator does when it encounters booleans, right? In JavaScript, the boolean values true and false are loosely equal to the numbers 1 and 0. So when you compare true with the loose equality operator, let me remove this. When you compare true with the double equals, true is equal to 1, we get true, and false when compared to 0 also gives us true. But let's see what the spec says, or how the spec says this operator should behave when it encounters booleans. So here, number 8, we have if type X. Nope. Number 9, we have if type X is boolean, call the two-number abstract operation on X on the boolean value before going ahead with the comparison, right? So it says if type X is boolean, return is loosely equal to number X then Y. So it just means that it doesn't even care what Y is. If type X is boolean, convert it to a number before going ahead with the comparison. It will also do the same thing if Y is the boolean. If X is a number, a string, whatever, and Y is a boolean, true or false, it will call the two-number abstract operation on Y, convert Y to a number or its number equivalent if it's possible before going ahead with the comparison. Okay, so what about objects? If we're comparing two objects that are of the same type, you know, maybe they're both arrays or both objects with either the strict or the abstract equality operators, they both have to reference the same object to be considered equal. They both have to point to the same object in memory to be considered equal. So let me get rid of this and put this here. So from what we have here, the variables A and B will be referencing the same array objects. They'll be pointing to the same array object in memory. So if we try to compare them with either the loose or strict equality operator, we'll get true because they are both pointing to the same object in memory. But C here is a different array object, right? They're both array objects. They are identical, but they are two different array objects. They're stored as two different array objects in memory. So they will be pointing to two different objects. They're identical, you know, they're both arrays, they have their values are the same. But when we compare A and C, we'll get false because they're they're referencing two different array objects. And of course, if we compare them with the lose equality operator, we get false as well. They're referencing, so both the strict and the lose equality operator, the double and triple equals, when comparing objects that are of the same type, the objects, both of them, they need to be pointing to the same object in memory. And I mean, it's the same for objects as well. D and E are pointing to the same object in memory. So when we compare them, we'll get true. But if we compare D and F or E and F, we'll get false. The objects look exactly the same, but they're referencing or they're pointing to two different objects in memory. So we'll get false. We get true. If you use the strict equality operator, we'll get true as well. But if we compare D to F, we get false because they're pointing to two different objects. So when comparing between objects, we need both objects to be of the same type and reference the exact same object in memory to be considered equal. If we're comparing a primitive value with a non-primitive value, say we have a string and an object, right? With the strict equality operator, with the triple equals, it won't work because they are of different types. But with the lose equality operator, let's see what the spec says the behavior should be. So it says 11 here. If type X is either string, number, big int, symbol, and type Y is object, return is loosely equal X to primitive Y. So this is basically saying if we have any of these primitive value data types and we're comparing that to an object or with an object, convert the object to its primitive equivalent first. It's going to convert the object to its primitive equivalent first before performing the comparison. So the object here will be converted to its primitive equivalent first with the it's going to use the two primitive abstract operation to convert it first. I have a video, oh god, I have said I have a video like 5 times here today. So I have a video on two primitive abstract operation, how JavaScript converts non-primitive values to their primitive equivalent, and I will also link it or leave a link in the description. It's also a very interesting one. So it says, and we're going to take an example now. If we have an object, if we're comparing an object with a string, number, big int, whatever it is, convert the object to its primitive equivalent first. Okay, let's take an example. So let's create a string object, right? We're calling the string constructor with a new keyword. Say hello, and then what? Let be hey. So obviously, if we compare both values with the strict equality operator, it's going to say, nope, I don't do that. A triple equals B. Say, no, they're of different types, so fix your shit or fix yourself. But if we use the abstract equality operator, if we compare them with the abstract equality operator, say, we get true. So here we're comparing this string object to this string literal, right? And the spec says the toPrimitive abstract operation will be called on this object to convert it to its primitive equivalent first. So this will get converted to a string, and then when we compare it, we get true. That's why we get true here when we use the lose equality operator or the double equals. And finally, we can conclude that the strict equality operator needs both the type and the values to match. So when we're comparing with the strict equality operator, the types and the values have to be exactly the same, except for those few cases we saw. And then the lose equality operator, the double equals, allows coercion when the types don't match. So if the types are not the same, JavaScript implicitly attempts to coerce them to the same type before going ahead with the comparison. And then when the types already match, if we're comparing with the double equals, it performs the strict equality comparison on them. We also saw that when the abstract equality operator performs type coercion, it prefers to convert to number first before going ahead with the comparison, right? Because we saw that it called the two-number abstract operation a few times. If you're trying to compare a string and a number, it's called two-number abstract operation on the string. If you're trying to compare a Boolean with any other value, call the two-number abstract operation on the Boolean value first. So that's interesting. We also saw that the abstract equality operator also prefers comparison between primitives, right? It says if you're comparing a primitive with a non-primitive, a string, a Boolean, whatever, a number with an object type, converts the object to its primitive equivalent first, call the toPrimitive abstract operation on the object, and convert it before going ahead with the comparison. So that was interesting. I think that as a JavaScript developer, you'll encounter coercion when writing JavaScript, and I really have no opinion on which operator is better, right? It depends on what sort of comparison you're looking to perform and whether or not you want to allow coercion. But just knowing the difference and understanding how they work can only make you better. So we've come to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. I hope you enjoyed it, because I did, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, no, wait. If you made it to this point, please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. Now, bye.